I think we worked successfully with the Americans over decades to manage this large, undefended, long undefended border. I'm briefed regularly, and as recently as this morning, by the Commissioner of the RCMP, Border Services, CSIS, on some of the preparations that are always undertaken at the border.
Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc on this program moments ago when I asked him about scrutiny on the northern border coming from none other than Donald Trump's new border czar. Tom Homan claims people from countries that sponsor terror use Canada as a gateway into the States. He says he expects to have tough conversations with the federal government here about the situation along our shared border, which he calls a, quote, extreme national security vulnerability. Here are some recent numbers about that. This year, U.S. Border Patrol agents have had more than 23,000 encounters with people illegally or irregularly crossing from Canada to the U.S. That's more than twice as many as the 10,000 encountered in 2023. And comparatively, back in 2022, there were just over 2,200 encounters. So what does that look like right at the border? Mark Weber is the national president of the Customs and Immigration Union. Hi, Mr. Weber. Good to see you. Thank you for making the time.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Donald Trump's new so-called border czar calls the northern border specifically, in his most recent interview, a huge national security issue. What's your reaction to that characterization?
Yeah, I mean, statements like that are concerning. Time will tell, as to what the effect will be at our borders with statements like that. So far, we haven't really seen much of an increase in the amount of claimants we're getting. But like I said, time will tell.
So my understanding is there's kind of two separate issues. The possibility, because of the deportation program that Trump is promising, that there is an increase, as you mentioned. The second is what this gentleman was focused on, which seemed to be what's happening right now, vis-a-vis, as he called it, human smuggling. So people who are essentially trying to get asylum in the U.S. by backdooring it through Canada. There we have objectively seen the numbers increase, according to the border on the other side. I'm just wondering, based on your membership, are you seeing that in particular, that kind of increase, and is it worrisome to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's concerning across the board. I think it's fair to say that these have been concerns for a long time. This isn't something new. CBSA currently, we estimate we need between 2,000 and 3,000 more officers at our borders just to deal with the volume that we're seeing right now. Of course, if that volume increases, that's only going to get worse, right?
Can you expand on the need for that? How long, for Canadians who maybe aren't familiar with the resourcing issue, how long has that been your view that you're that short-staffed? And how long have you essentially been making the case to the federal government that needs to be fixed?
We've been making that case at every opportunity for years. We've seen our numbers over, I'd say, the last decade slowly whittle down, and we see the CBSA relying largely on ill-conceived technologies. We see things like ArriveCAN, like CARM. We see more and more and more automation and less officers. Of course, if you're trying to catch smugglers, you need the people there to do that work. The CBSA seems very focused on facilitation. It's about getting people through as quickly as possible with as little interaction as possible with an officer, which of course lessens security, right?
Have you seen that from a qualitative perspective as well? Like, just what you were saying there is kind of interesting. I don't think I would have known that. Obviously, automation is happening everywhere, but the idea that, is there less time to talk to people who you do stop, let's say, or who are going through legal means? Like, has that changed?
Sure. I mean, we used to talk, to give an example, at airports, we used to speak with every traveler coming through. We speak to almost no one anymore. It's almost fully automated. We're largely relying on self-declaration. I mean, fingers crossed, we're waiting for the first smuggler to self-declare, but I'm not holding my breath. That's not going to happen, and that's not really what our job is or how things work. The CBSA seems to be really trying to more and more push that idea of facilitation over security. It's concerning.
Do you think, let's say, hiring 2,000 more people would make a discernible difference at the border? Like, what would that difference look like from your perspective?
It would make a huge difference in our ability to actually interact with travelers, to search the cars, to search the bags, to even do modes that we don't currently do. We don't look at rail at all. We have no idea what's coming into the country through rail. We simply don't have the staff to do it. We're looking at fully automating self-declaring cruise ships, like I said, at airports. I mean, we all go through airports and you don't see or really speak to anyone anymore. It's extremely concerning. It's disheartening for our members. Obviously, they get into this line of work because, you know, they want to keep Canadians safe. They want to keep things out of the country that Canada doesn't want to get into the country. And they see that really being taken away from them through all these different kinds of automation.
What's the perspective on for example, the St. Lawrence River? That gentleman, that News Czar really singled that out. He's from, New York, so he has, I think it sounded like from some familiarity. It was with a local station there, with Thousand Islands, with the St. Lawrence River. What is the patrol of that like from where you sit?
It's a source of concern. Currently, the CBSA does not patrol at all between ports of entry. We should be. Again, we simply don't have the mandate or the staff to be able to do that. So that's left completely to the RCMP or provincial police to do. And of course, they're short-staffed as well. So it's a problem that given our current staffing levels and current mandate, we don't really see getting any better. That's another thing we desperately need, is the ability to patrol and interdict between ports of entry. We don't have that right now.
And what's the conversation like? You talked about how you've been talking about staffing levels for a long time. I imagine you've also raised the issue of between ports of entry. Like, what is the reception from the federal government like on those issues?
The reception seems to be, polite agreements that security is a concern, but when it comes to actually implementing the nuts and bolts of how things work on the ground, that is left to the CBSA. And unfortunately, what we see is that the upper levels of CBSA management who make these decisions almost universally have never worked at a border, have never worked at as an officer. They really come into it quite clueless as to how things really work and what you need to do to actually do interdiction and keep our border safe. Again, the focus is almost entirely on new automation and ways to keep things moving faster with less staff.
When you take a step back and think about how we're not even close, like the inauguration hasn't even happened. One of the first people to Trump appointed was this person on the border, and the way in which they're talking about the northern border. Like, do you think that this new administration might change the conversation? What do you think? Will anything change given how focused this new administration seems to be on it?
I mean, again, I'd be guessing. Time will tell. Some of that might be hyperbole. Some of it, might be real intent. We'll see where it goes. I've not had any discussions with the CBSA or the federal government about what their expectations are. I think we're all kind of in a holding pattern, waiting to see whether those volumes at our borders do increase significantly.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Mr. Weber, I appreciate your time today very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Take care.